Today, we're looking again at the difference between heart leadership and head leadership. And why is that important? Well, for so many years, all the way through, as far as I can remember, there are people out there that will have strategies and steps that we all ought to follow. They'll teach us a certain way to do things. It's happening in the schools at the moment. A bit of a bugbear for me, but there's so many young people being force fed into a particular way of learning because some person has decided that's the right way. The trouble is, it can shut down the true way, the way that's going on inside your life, the way that's going on inside your heart. It can stop you from fulfilling your potential and moving forward in your life and maybe touching the lives that you should be able to touch and that you have the right to be able to touch. So today, I have got Philip Barrett with me, and I'm excited about having a conversation. We've met before. You might have found us on a mini video, but today we're talking about where true leaders are born in the heart, not the head. So, first of all, thank you very much for joining me, Philip.
Thank you, Angela, for having me again. We had a good conversation last time, both recorded and outside of recording. And yeah, I've been looking forward to this. It's something very close to my heart, the subject we're talking about. And as for the bugbear on the school system, in actual fact, the school system, it was quite openly designed to control the way our young minds are influenced. The Rockefellers openly said they do not want free thinkers, they want educated workers, and they are responsible for university system, the whole education system at large. I mean, it hasn't changed in forever, and many people believe that it can't change. But ultimately, children aren't meant to be penned into boxes, told how to look, how to think, where to be, and when. And the whole school system is designed to be counterintuitive. In fact, NASA did an experiment where they basically they wanted to find geniuses at an early age. So they tested a bunch of children at age 5 and found that all of them were on the genius scale. And then they followed them through the school system. And, I think it was by the age of like 12, the majority of them were not on the genius scale. The school system stamped out their creativity, their individuality, and their ability to feel free to ask questions, think differently, act differently, and it needs to change. I mean, we're both parents. My children are slightly younger than yours, and it's very, very relevant amongst other things in our society.
It is. It's hugely relevant. And I know there are people out there that are asking questions. In fact, lockdown provided an opportunity for parents to be involved in their children's learning. And there are parents who discovered things then that they weren't prepared to go back to. So the number of people home educating grew after lockdown because parents realized they could do it. They wanted to do it. They wanted to be involved in their children's, education. And obviously, from our perspective, we had 2 through school, 2 home educated, and the difference is vast. The difference in the way that they think, the younger two, the way that they use their heart and mind together, and they explore really creative solutions to things that are very different from those who, continue down the sort of prescribed pathway that's out there. So any exploration around that. In fact, actually, one other thing there, my husband started teaching in the 80s, and he had some incredibly advanced sort of learners. And actually, in the English curriculum at that time was very creative. And over the next 10 years or so, he absolutely loved his English classes. The spark of conversation, the life, the discussions that were going on were huge, and the children were really progressing. Now he won't teach in a school anymore. He's turned his back on that simply because he cannot. He was leading other teachers as head of the department. He couldn't do it. He said, I can't ask people to teach in a way that I think is counterintuitive to the way these children learn.
Absolutely. In general, the arts, creative and free thinking are being stamped out. When I was at school, drama, theatre studies, the English curriculum was very creatively encouraged. And, the lessons were there, and there was some focus upon creativity and expression and freedom. Whereas, my daughter's at secondary school now, and they do theatre studies every other week now, I think, not even regularly weekly. And it's not a creative, expressive space. A lot of the time it's come in, be quiet, sit down, here's a book, here's a theory, listen to this, regurgitate this, and the budgets for art and music and all of these things are being stamped out. And this all falls back to, it's people cry conspiracy theory and scoff at people that speak up about these things, but there is a concerted effort to stop free thinking and expression from an early age. There's no other way to look at it. I mean, it really is that simple. I mean, as I said, the Rockefellers were very open about it. That's what they wanted. They wanted others to enable them to stay rich by being educated, punctual, obedient workers. That's why uniforms, that's why set times, that's why shut up and sit down, regurgitate information. Nothing changes unless something changes. And therefore, freedom of thought and expression is essential in order for new ways of being to come about. We spoke briefly before you started recording about you cannot teach people traditional existing ways of thinking and being and expect different results. The Wright brothers, when they were trying to get machines to fly, were told that it could never work. The maths of the time did not support it. The physics, no, you're crazy. Now, they knew enough about what existed, but focused instead, like all artists, creative people, free thinkers, upon a vision that they had, something that they imagined here, and invented new ways of thinking and being and acting, and they made machines fly. And that is the same with every invention. Everything that we take for granted in our society did not exist once. Somebody imagined it, and they translated that from imagination into trial and error, and then found a way to make their creation a reality. Now, that's from a spiritual perspective, that's manifestation. That from a quantum physics perspective, that's matter manipulation. That is mind over matter, which is supported by the placebo effect. The fact that the double slit experiment, the interaction between the observer and what is being observed alters what reality is, how actual matter. So, whatever we imagine, we can create, and that is fact. You drove in a car today that never existed. Every element of that vehicle was non-existent until somebody thought about it and worked at it long enough until they made it happen. And people told them they were mad. And yet here we are. And these are just facts, as well we know. It's we're surrounded by it, yet so many are blind to the reality of what we're talking about, and that is the power of the individual, of an empowered, free-thinking, healthy, and confident human being. Confident in their own ability, confident in their own desires and wishes to express what it is they bring uniquely to the world, instead of being how everybody else is telling them to be, to fit a certain pattern and slot into a box to serve others. I'm talking about serving in a way that empowers and harnesses creativity and the hearts and minds of people. I'm talking about obedience. Modern slavery. The chains aren't there. Or, I mean, in some places they are, but the chains aren't there. Instead, we are enslaved by other people's enforced ways of being, learning, doing, debt. I could go a lot further into this subject. It's everywhere, and so few people are awake enough to truly appreciate that this has been in existence for a very long time. I mean, the Romans did not build the Colosseums and throw huge festivals and give bread to people and entertain out of the goodness of their heart. It was people control. It was distraction and manipulation. It was making it appear that they were giving the people what they want, when in actual fact, it still is only the people that enable this world to continue, other than God, obviously, but it's only through the actions of the masses that the few stay rich, that the society keeps turning, and yet we still have to pay to live on a world we were born on, which is completely absurd. So people have figured out a long time ago, thousands and thousands of years ago, the way to manipulate the majority into believing they had no power and had to do what they were told in order to exist in the world that they were maintaining and creating.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, often it's done in such a way that people think they have got some power, they have got a choice, or they have sort of chosen to do what they do. And that opens up a whole question of, well, why do they think that? And often, obviously, there's a lot of clever people behind making it that way, because there's nothing that stops somebody from moving forward more than when they think that they're in control already.
The best way to keep somebody imprisoned is for them not to know that they're in prison. If it's a brightly decorated prison and you have lots of flashing gizmos and things to entertain you and placate you, you're fed with food that isn't food, that keeps your body and mind functioning subpar. It's very, very easy to control people in that way, through fear, through the media, through division, through isolating free thinkers and people that speak up against the way things are and making them seem foolish. People say conspiracy theories are only a conspiracy theory until they're proven true. And how many of those have been proven true in recent years? I mean, some months ago, if you were to have said anything about the COVID vaccines, there were just some quite determined people saying that you were verging on criminal to say such things, where we exist in a supposed free society. And now, all over the world, the evidence is there. I didn't take the vaccine. The mother of my children, because she was in healthcare, had to. And yet, when we got COVID, she was the one that was coughing up blood, not me. And the long term, I mean, COVID is a bit of a touchy tangent, but that's just one of many things that, people have spoken up against, that was enforced upon us
Mm.
and called crazy. And now everywhere the evidence supports this. Everywhere, these same people that were threatened with legal action and this, that, and the other are going through legal sources to actually, prove that these companies poisoned people. And what else? In a world where population control is essential, then how deep do these things go? I mean, the fact that we all carry around microphones and cameras in our pockets that are continually, whether you switch your iPhone off, and there's plenty of resources online to support this. Even if you switch your iPhone off, it's still being tracked. And because it's a sealed unit, you can't remove batteries like you could in old phones, right? And even if you could, potentially there's other smaller batteries within the device that could keep such GPS devices, and if the thing's still on enough to be tracked by a GPS, is it still on enough to have a phone and a camera? And here again, I go into the realms where some people will go, "Oh, this guy's talking about them listening and watching you." But we live in the UK where there are more cameras per person than there are anywhere else in the world. Now, those cameras are painted for supposedly our safety and for the maintenance of society, but they're also a really good way to keep tabs on what everybody's doing. In the same way that in China, the digital currency is now widespread and everything is online. If you jaywalk, as it's called in China, and this was so 5 or 6 years ago, the cameras over there will use facial recognition. They know who you are. They will deduct a fine from your all the apps that they use there for all their money handling. They will deduct a fine automatically from you. They've got QR codes as citizens over there, so your citizen rating goes down automatically. There, and then photos of you in that area may then be put up because you broke the law. And this citizen rating, the QR code, means that you can't travel certain places, you can't have certain credit lines, you can't eat certain places, depending on how the central body decides to treat you. And I mean, please don't take my word for it. Check it. The evidence is out there for anyone that wants to look past going, this crazy man talking about population control. Please do the legwork, ask the questions, go out there and see. And it's the truth. That's what happens in China and has done for a very, very long time. And, the implications of this and the implications of what happens in our school system to our young are very wide ranging and quite frightening.
Yeah, they are. So when we're looking, what can we do about it? Because at the end of the day, There are people who will sit there and say, well, it's just life. That's just what happens. We haven't really got any choice. We just go along with it. And there are some who will feel like that, oh, that's just the easiest way. They don't really have a desire to do anything about it. But there's plenty of people out there also. And I'm coming across more and more, particularly when I start looking at the heart. There are plenty of people out there who do have something that's driving them forward. And actually, I have to say, many of them are of a certain age, just because they've begun to realize that their lives have been fashioned after what other people planned, and it wasn't necessarily in a bad way. It wasn't that they were, sort of absolutely forced to go down a career path, but it was what fitted. It was what they were advised to do, or maybe it fitted in with the family, or, and they just did it. And then they're coming to a certain age now of thinking, do you know what? I've never fulfilled my passion. I've never fulfilled my dream. I've never listened to my heart, and I've never allowed it to lead me anywhere. And now they're realizing that. So more and more are waking up and saying, do you know what? I'm not just going to sit back and walk my way into retirement with my slippers by the fire. That's not the life that I want. I want to get out there. I want to speak about what I'm passionate about. So how can we encourage people to start allowing themselves to listen more deeply, to look into things more widely, and to just be more open to finding out what is going on, what's underneath the surface, what have they been told that maybe wasn't quite true? How can we encourage that kind of free thinking?
It all starts with the individual. It begins and ends with self-awareness and self-actualization, to use, I suppose, a buzzword. But the bottom line is, the minute you start looking within yourself and exploring honestly the decisions you've made and why, and how that is different from what you would have liked as a child. And it's very easy to say, well, be realistic. At the end of the day, I had to get it. That's generational. I got a trade because I came from a working class family, and although I was very creative and thought about being a musician, an actor, something very heart led, it was of a time that everybody before me was, well, no, this is who we are, and you need to be realistic. You need to pay the bills. You need to do this, and that is where, amidst the school system and society at large, we are convinced to ignore our dreams. So it begins and ends with questioning your entire life, pretty much since childhood. And that, a lot of what I do is about childhood trauma. Everybody has programming, but by the age of 7, or sorry, up until the age of 7, we are in theta brainwave state, which is a form of hypnosis. That's how we learn to walk and talk, and a whole host of other things so rapidly. That In that state is where we learn, religion, standing in society, relationship with money, relationship with people. So any way that as a child we learn to deal with stresses and decisions is pretty much hardwired by the time we are 7 years old. And then life tends to compound that as you go on. And, stressful situations and outside effects then create your reality for you, rather than you choosing and you deciding what's happened to you. You are reacting out of a sense of survival from, old programming, from other people, from old situations, and from things that happened to you as a child when you didn't know better. And in psychology, there is any number of places you can find literature on the fact that, reparenting your inner child, questioning why you act the way you act, is very important, and then getting your subconscious mind to alter through repetition as it learnt. So to understand where you're going wrong in life, you then need to consciously work to change those patterns through repetition, which is very much what I do. It's how we learn anything and everything. If you want to do something different, you have to unlearn what you currently are doing and install new software to your mind. Essentially, you need to teach you, you need to understand that learning anything new is uncomfortable. facing the fact that you've lived a life up until your, say, you said of a certain age, around your 40s, should we say, or middle age, or that sort of age, suddenly facing the fact that you have been essentially on autopilot and you've been in a kind of survival mode and you have been making decisions based on what society, your parents, fear, any number of other things encourage you to do is hard. And, you know, you then have to heal from that. And in order to heal properly, you need to look at everything in your life. As I said before, nothing changes unless something changes. And to be honest, everything needs to change. You need to keep who you are at your core, in your heart, but what you eat, how you treat your body, how you think, how you talk to yourself, how you interact with others, all needs looking at and approaching differently. And it's a hard road, it's painful, but nothing in life worth having is ever easy. And in an age of instant gratification and fast food, it's very easy to do things the easy way. But then when you look at things in all reality, like processed foods, the entertainment that's in front of us, the TV, the internet, you know, as a person that grew up before the internet was a thing, before mobile phones were everywhere, you, the freedoms we enjoyed as children, that's why I think our generation, you know, whatever generation you claim to be, all the buzzwords, but people of my age and older were lucky enough to be free from technology, free from a certain amount of interaction with the rest of the world, and therefore controlled by a lot of other voices and minds, that we could just exist and go out and explore for ourselves. And that is very liberating. That's why a lot of people of our generation are now against all odds. Don't get me wrong, we have things to learn from younger generations and with new technologies 100%, but we also have a lot to give, and a lot things that are a lot closer to natural rhythms, natural ways of being, rather than artificially enforced ways of being. And like I said, it does begin with questioning everything, questioning why you eat what you eat. People will drink alcohol now regularly. It's everywhere. It's legal, so obviously it must be acceptable. And it's probably more unusual for someone to say that they don't drink alcohol than someone to say they don't really drink water or hydrate properly. And so I gave up drinking. And you tell people you don't give up you don't drink anymore, and they will, you don't drink. You know, was there a problem? And in some cases, yes. In some cases, no. But if you were to say to those same people, I don't drink water, so you drink tea and juice and Coca-Cola and all of these other things are completely acceptable. But correct natural hydration is, you know, it seems like that we have a health food aisle in supermarkets. We pay more for organic food. Everywhere you look, there are things pointing to the fact that everything is backwards. If we have to pay more for healthy food that isn't full of pesticides, genetic modification, and various other poisons, then that quite clearly tells you that the government across the world does not support the health of its population.
Yeah.
You know, it subsidizes the production of processed food. The food pyramid, where we were told that eating plenty of grains and things and wheat was really good for us, not that these things convert to sugars and are harmful in a diabetic sense. These things have been proven as fallacies. That we've been lied to again and again, and that if we're being told to eat certain things which are medically wrong for us, and that was promoted and pushed to consumers, to population, even medical advice, then you really, like, ask questions, like, just don't take what I say, don't take what you say, don't take what anybody says as gospel. Actually understand it for yourself, want to know, yeah, and start with yourself, ask the questions about yourself, and then as you go down that route, you begin to heal. And you think, well, if I know that eating right, drinking right, exercising is good for me and therefore will affect my physical and mental health and enable me to live a better life and be a better contributing member of society, why aren't I doing it?
Mm. Yeah,
And
a very good question. You've raised so many issues there. I mean, and the first one I just wanted to sort of endorse really is the whole idea of having to unlearn things, because even when we took our children out of school, somebody said to us, do you realize it's going to take them time to unlearn being in school? And that was just in little ways. Like I remember Jacob saying to me the one day at 3:30 when I was asking him to do something or he was reading, I've got to stop now. Well, why? But you're enjoying it, aren't you? Yes, but I know, but it's time to stop now, isn't it? It's 3:30. I can see it on the clock. And it's just a little thing like that, which had become habit for him, because obviously he'd been in school for 5 years by then. It was, you only do it at this time. And helping them to see, and our youngest son who didn't go to school, that learning is all around you. Learning is there for you to do at any time. And all you need to do is just open your mind and have a look and ask those questions, like you're saying. Hugely different experience, opening up a hugely different way. And of course, many of us, most of us have been through the school system. So we've been taught, when we learn, how we learn, what we learn, and so on. Where do we find information from? And yes, the world is open in one sense. We can go find anything we want to. So anybody listening here, you can go out and find, you can go and check, you can hear, you can see information out there. But you have to want to do it. You have to want to go and ask the questions and explore, what's going on. And you have to just give yourself permission not to believe the same as everybody else. You might choose to. You might go out there and explore and decide that you're just going to stay following the same path that you've always followed. But I love the way you talked about as well the shopping aisle and how, you've got these aisles that are promoted as the healthy living aisle, or packaging labels on food telling you, oh, this is healthier for you. When the truth is that really we should be able to buy, and we should be able to assume that everything is healthy for us, and the things that aren't healthy for us maybe be highlighted so that you know that you're buying something that's packed full of sugar. I mean, as a little girl, rosehip syrup was the big thing that was being promoted and sold, and the doctors were recommending that your child had rosehip syrup before they went to bed. It was full of sugar. That's all that was in it, really. It tasted delicious. Of course, we liked drinking it because it tasted delicious. Did it help our teeth? No. It gave us some vitamin C, but the vitamin C should have been from an orange, or and it was. My mum is actually a very fit, healthy 98-year-old, and she has painstakingly tried to live, certainly food-wise, in a healthy way. But you get told something and everybody's doing it. Our first child went to playgroup at the age of 2.5. Of course, everybody said he's going to miss out if he doesn't. He's intelligent. That's what he needs. He needs to go into playgroup at the age of 2.5. No, he didn't. It damaged him. It damaged him right
yeah,
down inside. And I regret sending him. But we've moved on and we've learned a lot through it, and you have to, instead of saying, well, yeah, but that's what everybody has to do that. You need to stand up and say, why? Why? Why do we do the things that we do? Why do we make the decisions that we make? Why do we let our children do the things that we're told that they should do? It's not an easy
yeah,
journey
and
to take, is it?
it's not, but that just keeps harking back to the fact that, people need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's only by, in the same way that building muscle involves tearing muscle and healing it to get stronger. You stress your body, yeah, and you become stronger because of it. And exercise, regular exercise, it does hurt. I wake up, not every morning, most mornings I wake up, I have a cold shower, and then I do calisthenics. And there's you don't want to get in a cold shower first thing in the morning. I mean, you really don't. And I stay in until I can't take it anymore. And that is all part of teaching the subconscious mind that actually I will do what I choose to do instead of what I'm programmed to do and what is easier. Because unlearning things is so much more difficult when you are however many years down the line and you have been repeatedly told the same thing, and everybody around you is a repetition of this same example, same way of living, same way of eating, same way of thinking, same way of talking, same way of dressing. You the minute you start looking at it and seriously questioning it, you realize just how wide ranging it is. If everybody is just another version of you, they've grown up the same way, and all right, they might have had different life experiences, but essentially they've been through the same school system. The curriculum is universal, you know. Then they've all been programmed in the same way, and they came from, if they're in England, they came from the same society at different level. You know, you're a working class, or you might have thought you were middle class, or whatever. These same things are just repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated. And that's mind control. The human being loves routine, it loves repetition. And all you need to do to change that is change the repetition. What is it you are repeating that doesn't serve you, and what would serve you better? You know, the whole food thing, the fact that we pay more for organic food, naturally grown, the fact that it's painted that growing your own food is difficult and, you know, a little bit alternative, when actually it isn't. All the way down to like a watermelon. Most watermelons you find are unseeded. That's not natural. You know, you could take a seed from a seeded watermelon and grow them even in this country quite easily, and you would have wonderful. I mean, I've just recently I bought a watermelon from a local Asian store, and they come over, so they're not GM, they're not covered in pesticides, they are a naturally grown watermelon, and I've saved the seeds because I intend to grow my own watermelon. People like the junk food, the high amounts of sugar that's in everything. Just last night, I've been thinking about it for a while. Like, we all enjoy chocolate and we all enjoy sweet things. You might like a bit of fruit and nut. So I thought, well, I've been having, instead of having buying a bar of fruit nut, I have some organic cacao, so ceremonial cacao. I melted it down. I added some cinnamon. I added some honey instead of sugar to sweeten it. And I crushed up organic nuts and raisins. And now I have mini fruit nut bites. And it's quite grown up in that state because it's like a dark chocolate. But all I need to do is add some creamed coconut, possibly some coconut milk. And I have a chocolate bar that has no refined sugar in it and is good for you. Cacao is good for gut health. It's good for circulation. Do you know what I mean? Nuts
Mm.
and raisins, full of fiber and unknown health benefits, particularly organic, obviously. Yet everywhere we go, you buy chocolate. It's sweet. You love it. You have it because it's easy and it's there and it's promoted and it's cheaper. It's just easy and it's what's always been there. Yet now, if I get a sweet craving, instead of sugar, it's honey. You know, instead of chocolate, it's cacao. And look, yeah, there is an expense to these things. Like I said, you pay more to eat well, but the alternative, and I appreciate that times are very hard. I am not one of these elite. I am not uber rich, but rather put good food in myself than have certain other luxuries, because everything begins with your own health. We're talking about heart and brain here. You know, this is what this podcast is about. There are more, you've got neurotransmitters in your heart and in your gut. Okay. But there are more neural pathways going from your heart to your head than the other way around. So you check this. I'm saying, anybody watching this, check. We have a head brain, a heart brain, and a gut brain. Yeah, there are, you know, brain cells. They store information and have access to it and communicate. Now, obviously, the subconscious mind is up here, but think happy chemicals, the things that that reward us or help us, dopamine and serotonin, we think very heavily are produced in the brain, where in actual fact 50% of the dopamine in our body is produced by our gut. 90% of the serotonin in our body is produced by our gut, by our stomach lining, and that is dependent on having a healthy gut. Yeah, they're endocrine cells in the stomach, in the gut lining, and they're human cells, but they can't function without the correct bacteria within the stomach. So, whereas mental illnesses are treated with pharmaceutical drugs, which are very much focused on the way a chemical can affect the mind, what they're in fact doing to your stomach is more harmful. Alcohol is, or should be, well known as a depressant, and people who are depressed, myself, I battled anxiety, depression, ADHD, PTSD, OCD, and all these things that I've become self-aware of and had to deal with. Everything starts with your own health, and that starts with your gut. And when you start becoming more healthy, it's easier to link your head and your heart, or rather listen to what your heart's telling you, without all the noise, without the brain fog, without the confusion, without. If you're healthy, if you're well hydrated, your mind functions better, your organs function better. Therefore, everything, including you, the way you think and act, improves. That's why relying on chemical intervention, self-medication, or should be counterintuitive. It's certainly counterproductive. And I'm not dismissing modern medicine, but we've been very much disassociated from the fact that modern medicine stems and became what it is by getting their initial information and all the raw materials from nature, from plants, from the animal kingdom, from around. All medicine is synthesized from natural sources. And people that would go and see someone for holistic approaches, herbs, and treat ailments that way are very much frowned upon at large, when in actual fact, that makes far more sense. We're carbon based. Herbs are carbon based. And although you can argue that there's an element of, synthesized drugs that are, it's not the same thing. It's not congruent with our system, as is the artificial, synthesized, processed foods that we are fed at large. I mean, America is a prime example. The amount of food that is banned in other countries that comes from America. Also, we have foods in this country that you have in America, but the ingredient lists are different here than they are in America, because America has perfected pumping poisons into its population, and that is frightening. Unhealthy people make unhealthy decisions and continue to do so. And it's that simple. If people are to change the world, they need to start with themselves. If they are to help others, they need to help themselves first. And for that, they need to be able to understand themselves. And in order to be able to understand yourself properly, you need to be able to think clearly enough and be connected with your own mind and body in a way that enables you to act upon what you think and do it with clarity and purpose, rather than out of a sense of programming, fear, autopilot. And
Yeah, I think, and not only that, I think the other thing, well, certainly that's been true for us, is don't stay on your own. I think there are a lot of people out there who have got questions, who are puzzled, who have got thoughts about things that they've seen or they've heard, but they're almost afraid to talk about it because, as you've said, it's so easy to be written off as a conspiracy theorist. And our eldest son, who was late diagnosed as ADHD, has had all sorts of things. And he would say, he'd be the first person to say, some of the difficulties he's gone through and answers he was looking for. But I know it's probably about 3-4 years ago when he started talking and asking questions and saying, I don't understand this. Why do people do this? Is this really what the truth is? Or I've heard this. And, he was looked down on, he was frowned upon, he was ridiculed because of some of the questions he was asking, just because it didn't fit the norm. The things he was asking did not fit the norm. And he got into some very sort of deep discussions with people who disagreed with him. And now he's grown a lot himself. He's finding ways to express things. And I think he would be the first to admit that he went in all guns blazing 4 years ago when he was trying to get people to sort of talk to. I think he was so frustrated at the time. He was just literally going in there and getting it all out kind of into their face. And of course, if somebody doesn't think like you at all and you suddenly come out with a whole pile of stuff they've never heard before or never considered, then it made for difficult conversations. And as time's gone on, He's explored things. He's maybe looked more into things and realized that maybe some of the things he said were completely off the wall, but there was a lot of truth underneath what he was talking about. And he's gone out there and asked, and having conversations with him it's really good for him, because he doesn't sit on his own thinking that he's the only one that feels like that. And anything that you've shared or that we've talked about in this discussion now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I'd love to know more, you know, or I've thought that, but I don't know who to say it to. Because if I say it, people are going to think I'm crazy. If I ask those questions, people are going to think that I'm the odd one. Then there's plenty of other people out there that think and are thinking and are asking questions. So, literally don't stay on your own, because you actually do need other people around you to explore some of these things. And as you've said, Philip, there's actually a lot of information out there if you know where to look for it, or even if you just start searching. There's much more out there than there was. And there's a lot more people asking questions and exploring these kind of topics, because we don't just want to stay in the dark, do we? We don't just want to keep on walking the same path that everybody's walked before us. Well, I certainly don't. I mean, the business I started, even when I started it, I had somebody helping me, and he started to say to me, you can't do this business. You've never done it before. You can't charge people for what you're doing because you're not tested and tried it. But I had tested and tried it for free with people. I was helping people. And I was like, I need to feed myself. I need to earn some money. And I started to go out there and create a community of people who will support, uphold, care for, commit to each other, who will help each other's ideas to grow, and who will help those things to be spoken about, go out there to promote them and talk about them. And it's just gone from strength to strength, because it's allowing people to be themselves, and it's allowing them to follow what's in their heart and to actually start living by it, speaking by it, and changing other people's lives through it. And I'm so glad that I didn't bow down to that thought. You can't do that. It's different. It's not the way people do business. I don't charge high figures. I don't go out there with using NLP to try and trick people into buying from me. It's a very collaborative community. It's almost like the sort of the kind of corporations that you get, the cooperatives, I should say. It's like that. It's different and it's powerful. And I'm really glad I didn't sort of bow down to those who were telling me it wasn't a model that could work, because it does.
Yeah, and you discovered, against supposed all odds, that you are not alone. And by having the courage to be yourself and express that openly, others like you gravitate towards you. And as I said, borders, religion, money, uh, things we're taught generally encourage us to think that we're alone, that we're isolated, and that as such we can have no real impact. And it's only by becoming empowered yourself, it's very easy, like you said. I mean, I'm quite passionate, and I will, when you get me talking about something, I will unload a bunch of information. And you're right, to a lot of people, they'll close down because that they're not used to thinking that way. So the best thing we can do is be the example by living in a certain way that is different to others, or challenges people, but doing it in a way. I'm not here to, that's why I say go and ask the questions yourself, go and find out. I'm not here to enforce my opinions or what I know and experience to be true on other people. Everybody has their right and should exercise it to question this and find out for themselves. All I'm doing is being as authentically me as I can be after years of basically doing what I thought I should be doing, or was programmed to, or, in some kind of sense of survival mode. I'm just being myself. And if through doing that, I can spark something in somebody else, even if it's just the tiniest seed planted, then you've done your job. We're not here to force people to do what we say and think. We are here to be who we are and offer to help, but ultimately to encourage them to do it for themselves. As we said when we last spoke, for a long time, I was very focused, because I wanted to change my life, on, this mentality in the coaching world where it's for the six figures, it's for the money, and you do this and you scale that. ultimately, I would rather not spend all my hours coaching someone one to one. I would rather not spend all my time talking a lot to people about this. I would rather give them the information as much as I've learned and let them then use that to empower themselves and go away and do it and help other people. This is the school system teaches us in a way that we are taught a bunch of ways to understand something and then we're given a test. Life is about being tested and then learning lessons because of it. It's the other way around. The reality of our existence is only through going out and doing things do we really learn. And that means interacting with other people, challenging pre-existing ideas and ways of being, and feeling confident enough to express ourselves, listening to that little voice inside you, whether it's your inner child, your intuition, whatever you want, your higher self, whatever you want to call it. Everybody has it, and everybody has ignored it for much of their life. There's very, very few people out there that had a passion and followed it because they were led to believe that that just isn't possible. There's people out there that are living their dream because they did it. The majority of billionaires are dyslexic, did not go through the school system successfully, and ignored what people were telling them. Richard Branson being a prime example. Oh, you'll never do this, you're crazy, you're going to end up this way, you're going to end up that way. No, had a vision, pursued it with all that he was, and now he's got his own island, amongst many, many other things, and he did it all himself. And when I say he did it all himself, he empowered himself enough that others gravitated towards him. He was then able to see clearly enough in other people where he would perhaps lack in certain skills and knowledge to put the right people around him to facilitate. Every successful person in the world will say that they ignored what they were told and they surrounded themselves with people that were not like-minded, but similar in the way that they brought something that facilitated bringing these visions to life, making something that was a dream, something from imagination, a reality. And on a much wider scale, a planet that we are not poisoning is something that we need. You might hear any number of billionaires talking about the possibility of living in space. That is not a goal. I mean, that is something you might be able to do, but there's no ocean in space. There's no fresh air. There's no trees. There's no animal. Like, everything we need to do is about reconnecting with ourselves, with nature, with how we are truly meant to be, with each other as people. As one race. We are not individual races, creeds, colors. Religion, money, location are nothing to do with the fact that we all breathe the same air, we all need the same basic things, and everything else it is really just a matter of opinion. And we're not here to that's where we go wrong. We're not here to enforce our beliefs and opinions on other people. We're here to appreciate diversity and what each individual brings uniquely and allow them to be who they are. If we're not hurting people, then we're here to support each other, and we're here to support the world at large and the ecosystem we're a part of, in order that everything that we care about can continue to thrive.
Yes. Gosh, I mean, even just everything that you've just said, it sounds utopian, doesn't it? It sounds like the sort of thing that people might have made a film about, because it's so far from what people are walking into or are living. But unless people go out there and ask questions, unless people go out there and raise these kind of topics, things will just carry on as they have always carried on.
And is that
And
working for us?
no, quite clearly it isn't, is it? I would hazard a guess that most people would say it isn't working if you ask them quietly in a corner on their own, do you think that how we're currently living is working for us. And most people would probably say no, even if they
We
were quite
are
happy.
here's some cold hard facts for you. We have approximately 50 years of viable soil left to farm on this planet, right? Because of the way intensive farming, pesticides and chemicals are being used, we are killing off the microorganisms that are present within our soil. And you know, there are a number of resources out there, but just have a look into how many microorganisms live in a single inch of healthy soil. And that clearly illustrates right there that whatever we're doing in the world does not work. Yet what we're being told by the industry and the status quo is that that's how we get more food and we feed the people. No, it isn't, because once nature is dead, there's no coming back from that. And that's where we have been detached from the reality of the world. There isn't a question of, you said, if you take people to one side, is how we're living working, and people sort of timidly say, well, no, I don't think it is. Fact, it's not working. Fact, we are around 50 years. We, in many ways, we have irreversibly affected the way the planet is. However, everywhere there are examples of, if we leave nature alone, it will regenerate itself. And David Attenborough has made a number of films, amongst other people, about how if we just stop interfering with nature and remove ourselves from it, that it will regenerate, which gives hope, which means that if we start living with each other, living within the ecosystem, within our planet in a more symbiotic way, then the nature has always supported us. It will continue to do so. Our planet will heal itself. Our bodies are able to heal itself if we just appreciate natural rhythms as opposed to this artificial world that surrounds us and ways of being that have been enforced upon us ultimately to make certain people money and keep them wealthy. I think it's called, and I don't put me, The Need to Grow, I think the documentary's called. And basically, in America, in Montana, these people made a power station that was powered by organic waste that was headed for landfills. And it was not only carbon neutral, but the way this power station worked, it didn't burn the matter, it superheated it and generated electricity as like almost a waste byproduct. This one small power station was completely off grid, completely closed cycle, and could have powered up to 100 homes. It could also, from the heat generated by it, enabled greenhouses to grow tropical fruit in frozen Montana in the winter. The other waste product from superheating this biomass that was headed for landfill was something called biochar. And biochar is something that can help regenerate the soil. Also within this power station, they had an algae farm in the main sort of area. The front area of this power station was like a giant greenhouse, and they had an algae farm. So between the algae they grew and the biochar that was produced by burning what was essentially going to be landfill, they could regenerate the soil and they could power homes, and they made it viable that people could earn a living from doing so. Now, that goes against all numbers of big business. That goes against the pesticide industry. It goes against the major providers of power and fuel and any numbers of things. If you don't start to question why, if there is a power station that exists and technology that exists that can do that, why it's not widespread. And I think it is called The Need to Grow, but use the internet. Investigate a power station that burns what is essentially landfill, and the worst byproduct it produces is electricity. And it's not just carbon neutral, it's carbon negative, and it can help regenerate the soil. It can give back to nature. And then question why, in a world that's supposedly got green initiatives and a budget in every government to produce ethical and environmentally friendly materials, electricity, fuels, why that is not widespread. And that is because there is a lot of very wealthy people that won't be wealthy anymore if you put that technology in the hands of the people at large, because you remove the need to pay them for it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I digress, but that is something that's really, really important to me. If nothing else, if nobody cares about the fact that I'm a life coach, that being healthy is good, just go and have a look out there, understanding that the world we're living in is dying because of the way we treat it, for the sake of your children and your children's children. Go and investigate the fact that there is technology out there right now that can generate electricity for everybody in a way that is completely in harmony with nature, and ask why that is not widespread already. And that in itself will give you all the answers you need. But, you know, start with yourself, drink more water, eat healthy, exercise, meditate, engage with other like minded people, be different, be unique, like yourself.
Yeah. Be willing to ask.
Don't
Be
listen to me. Go out there and do what you want to do. But whatever, stop accepting things the way they are and start choosing the way you would like it to be and go after it. Because anything other than that is not living.
Yes. Well, we've covered so many areas there. And, if you're listening and you've got questions or you want to explore further, then you'll find Philip's details alongside this video. And obviously, you'll see mine too. And if you've got something that you want to say, if you have started following your heart instead of your head, or instead of being directed by other people's heads, actually, often, then don't stay quiet. Come and talk, come and speak out, speak up, ask the questions you want to ask. Don't sit in the dark. Don't take everything for granted. Don't assume that because it's that way now, it has to be that way tomorrow. Because within all of us is the power to change, but it has to start with us. If we're willing to accept everything as it is now, then we can't help any change at all. But in each of us, there's something deeper. We just have to be prepared to look for it and open it up and share it. So that's my call to you today. Don't sit in the dark. Allow yourself to see what's happening around you and step into it so that you're part of the change. Thanks for coming along today, Philip.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you very much for listening to me rant.